made this ginormous Valentine's Day card with stuff from the Dollar Tree. It cost a whole $6.10. The Dollar Tree vinyl is now 2 rolls for $1. That's 50 cents for 4 feet of vinyl. Now, it is not the greatest of quality. I will not use it on regular projects, and it does take some patience to work with, but it is good for projects like this where you don't want to spend a ton of money and it's a larger project. I am going to be straight up honest with you and tell you that I did struggle using this vinyl, and I've caught it all on video. So if you want a good laugh, stick around, and that way you can learn what not to do when using this vinyl. Hi, I'm Brenda Lambert. I'm a TJC licensed instructor for Silhouette. You've found your way to Silhouette Success. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the tips, tricks, tutorials, and let's get started. I started off with this cute gnome bundle from Creative Fabrica, and I brought that in and did a little bit of work with it, but then I realized that it did not have a girly girl gnome. So I went back to Creative Fabrica, found this one, and decided to just steal the braids and swap that out for the beard. I scaled all of my gnomes so that they were as wide as they could be to cut on the 12-inch wide vinyl, and then I separated all of the pieces by color and got them situated on a page. I am using a 12 by 24 cutting mat for this. I did not trust the vinyl to send it through on just the roll. I am going to speed this up because I want you to see exactly what went on while I was making this, but I don't want it to be forever long because it did take quite a while to do. Now you can see that right off the bat I ran into some issues. I put the vinyl down on the mat and instantly it started bubbling up from the backing. When there are bumps and lumps in the vinyl, it's not going to get a very good cut, so I smoothed it out the best I could and ran it through the machine. I did do a test cut with this because it's not a vinyl that I use regularly. I set my settings to the presets in Silhouette Studio for vinyl matte, then bump my blade up by 1, which is what I always do with regular adhesive vinyl. It did do well on the test cut, so I went ahead with cutting out the design. As soon as the machine started cutting, I could see that the vinyl was getting ripples in it again, which is not a good sign, but it did cut. I checked the cut before I ejected the mat. Everything looked good, so I went on to weeding. I did notice that in some of the spots where it bubbled up, the machine did not cut all the way through. This one was not bad enough to where it was unusable. I just had to kind of give it a little tug. The vinyl separated nicely and I was able to move on. One good thing I can say about the dollar store vinyl is that when they say it is 4 feet, they mean that it is 4 feet. I had exactly enough to cover the 12 by 24 mat twice. A not so good thing about the vinyl is that the further into the roll you get, the more humps and bumps you get. It is rolled tighter towards the middle, and that is what's causing this. In weeding the second sheet, I found that the stripes for one of the gnome hats didn't cut great, but I was able to use my weeding tool to help the process along, and I did get that done as well. I'm not going to go through each of the sheets because pretty much the same thing happened with each one, but I did want to go through this one here because you can see that some of these spots were wide enough that I had to use my X-Acto knife to get that cut apart. But you can just see where one line ends, the other one begins. You make a straight cut across there and you're gonna be okay. This sheet of vinyl was a more complex design. It was full of text and it was quite large. Again, I'm using the 12 by 24 mat, so this was a lot of weeding to get done all at one time. You can see I was using my scissors to cut away the excess vinyl so that it did not get stuck back down to the vinyl that I needed to stay there. So these are just some tips and tricks that you can use whether you're using the Dollar Tree vinyl or just any other brand, really. If you're having a hard time, take your time, use your extra tools, your X-Acto knife, your scissors, your weeding tools, whatever you need to get through the project. Now, sometimes you are going to have things that are just a total loss and you can't work with them really, and then unfortunately you will have to start over. But in some cases like this, you can just give it a little bit of extra help and things will turn out okay. Now that you have finished all of the cutting and the weeding, take a minute to pat yourself on the back, take a deep breath, or have a dance party. We're going to move on to putting all of this together. Grab your 2 foam boards from the Dollar Tree and the duct tape. I wanted white, they didn't have it, so we're adding a little pizzazz to the project here, but that's okay. Let's improvise. You want your boards completely lined up, stacked one on top of the other, and we're just going to place a line of the duct tape, try to get it even along the one edge. Once that's placed down and trimmed, we're going to just bend it around that corner of the 2 boards, and that's going to be the binding for our card. I'm not going to put any on the inside. You can if you want your card sturdier, but since this does not match, I'm just doing the outside of the card. Now this is the point where things started getting really dicey, and you need to listen up to hear these tips and tricks because they will save you a lot of time and headache. When I went to apply the transfer tape, I realized that all of these designs had bubbled up again, so I set them back on the mat to smooth everything out so that the transfer tape would lay on there nicely. I took the extra step of leaving the backing on the transfer tape so I could set it down a little bit at a time, but no matter how hard I tried, it still wrinkled up as soon as the transfer tape touched it. Against my better judgment, I decided to move forward and slap this baby onto the foam board. Instant regret. Let's redirect. We're going to peel this up a little bit and try to smooth it down a little bit at a time. This was working until I got to the bottom of the gnome, and you can see here that the bottom was much more wrinkly than the top was, and it just was not going to work. Here I decided that I needed to lift the whole thing up and try to remove the vinyl from the transfer tape, but the transfer tape stuck to the foam board and ended up tearing up a little bit of the foam board. So, pressing on one more time, I flipped the board over to start over. I need to lift this decal up off of the transfer tape, and as you're watching this, you're going to think I'm some kind of wizard or something, but I'm not. You can do this too. It just takes a lot of patience and determination. Once it was up off of the transfer tape, I set it down on the board just like a huge sticker, and that did work out better. It was still a little bit of touch and go. It was still very nerve-wracking, but it was way better than trying to use the transfer tape. I decided that I was only going to use the transfer tape for the letters, and even that was a bit difficult. But the whole point of this project is that you sometimes have to stop and think and improvise and do things differently than you typically would to get through a project. And it can be frustrating and all of the things, but if you step back, take a breath, think about it, you can get it done, and the sense of accomplishment when you are all finished is going to be amazing. So once again, you're going to pat yourself on the back and have a dance party. Now, after all of this struggle, I'm sure you're wondering if I will ever use Dollar Tree vinyl again, and the answer is yes. This was a learning experience, but I know so many more things now than I did when I started. And next time when I use this vinyl along with these project boards, it's not going to be as difficult because I know what to look out for. Number one, you don't want to use your transfer tape with these foam boards if you can avoid it. If you do have to use transfer tape, make sure you stick it to your shirt or a towel a couple of times so it's not quite as sticky, and only use what you have to use. You don't want a lot of extra hanging off the sides of your designs. If you are using transfer tape, you want to apply the transfer tape to the design before you take the backing off of your cutting mat. So you want to cut the vinyl, weed the vinyl all on the mat, then place your transfer tape down, then pull the backing off of the mat so that you can cut the next sheet of vinyl. You're going to end up with a lot less wrinkles and bubbles that way. When you are using the transfer tape with these foam boards, and it's time to remove the transfer tape from the design, you want to lift slowly and at an angle so that it doesn't tear the cover on the foam boards. But overall, this vinyl did cut decent, and overall it saved a ton of money. If I had done this project with Oracal or Caesar vinyl, it would have cost about $1 per foot of vinyl. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this cost 50 cents for 4 feet. So it is a drastic savings. So when you're doing a project like this, it's a large project, but it's not really meant to last forever. You don't need to use the best materials out there. So you need to weigh the cost of your material against the extra time it's going to take you to work with said material. I will be using the Dollar Tree vinyl again for projects like this, mind you. I would not use this vinyl for anything that needs to last a long time per se, but for something like this, absolutely, I will buy it again. Remember, creating and crafting is a whole process, and there are going to be days when things just do not go right. Don't give up. Keep plugging away. You will get it. And if you don't mind, leave me your review of Dollar Tree vinyl in the comments if you have used it before. As always, go create something amazing, and I will see you in the next video.